Hello there. Happy Monday, everyone. Hope you're having an excellent day and had a great weekend. Today, we're going to be talking about some Age of Sigmar stuff, a little different than the Warhammer fantasy we've been focusing on, because we got a new article focusing on the Beastmen, and I actually wanted to go over it, or rather, the Beasts of Chaos, as they're called in AOS, because it has some really interesting potential for things we might hopefully see in the future, which may also hopefully relate to things we will see in fantasy. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the article, and once we finish with the article, we'll actually talk about why, well, the main reason I'm really focused on it for today. So, let's hop right into it. So, we have the Beasts of Chaos showing up in Age of Sigmar, and there are a couple of notes that I want to draw to. First is, the range is looking pretty nice. It's always nice to see that the cockatrice seems to be treated as an official member. Please, CA, give us cockatrice. But basically, the main gist of the article is that the Beasts of Chaos, or their new book, is coming out. There has not been any word on any new models except for this guy right in the center, the new Beast Lord. I am hoping they might surprise us with some brand new minis, but what's actually kind of interesting from a lore standpoint is we actually see the Beasts of Chaos are kind of going on the warpath. We are in 3rd edition in Age of Sigmar, and there's an event going on called the Era of the Beasts. So basically, the way Age of Sigmar seems to be working at the moment is that every edition, quote unquote, seems to be focused on one of the 8 winds of magic kind of going into ascendancy during that edition. And then whichever of those winds is an ascendancy, it has like a dramatic effect on everything going around it. So where 1st edition was focused on the Realm Gate Wars, which was basically just it basically was that Chaos was very close to achieving End Times 2.0, and then the Stormcast Eternal showed up and started slapping them around, and once Chaos was getting slapped around by the Stormcast Eternals, everybody came out of the woodwork and also started just curb stomping on Chaos. So there was basically it was just a brutal beatdown. I don't know if you've ever seen that meme from JoJo Bizarre's Adventures where it's just like those 3 guys kicking the crap out of one other guy, but Chaos is basically the guy on the ground, and everyone, all the other factions were the other 3 guys. But in any event, 2nd edition was after the Realm Gate Wars. The start of 2nd edition focused that there was a 100-year time skip after the end of 1st edition, and at the start of 2nd edition, we were really focusing on that all these new cities had been established. So basically, the factions of Order and Death and Destruction had finally reestablished themselves amidst Chaos's calling it a defeat might be a little much, but Chaos was definitely pushed back significantly. So Order built a bunch of the new cities of Sigmar. Many of the factions had revealed themselves after being in hiding for a long time. Alariel had reclaimed much of the Realm of Life. The Caradron Overlords had revealed themselves and come down from like the highest heights in the skies and were busy with all sorts of stuff. So things are happening. And then about a little way into 2nd edition, we got the, oh my gosh, Dread Omens, I think it was called, which led up to the Necroquake, which was that the forces of death became ascendant. So 2nd edition was mostly focused on death factions and really had death being the big bads. That led up to the end of 2nd edition, which gave us the Mortal Realms crisis, and the Mortal Realms basically followed around that Morghur took advantage of a lot of the things going on to ascend herself to a god, so she became kind of the first rogue god of Order, in that we have an Order pantheon essentially, but most of them were at least vaguely aligned with Sigmar, other than Malarian, who hasn't really appeared yet, which Malarian is Malekith for anyone that is from fantasy and doesn't follow AOS. But after Morathi ascended to godhood, she actually is the first god of Order who is just doing her own thing completely and is kind of a villain among the Order gods, though they're not all of them. I would say all of the Order gods definitely have flaws that make them kind of concerning. None of them are truly good. But in any event, Morghur ascended to godhood. Then Teclis had his big showdown with Nagash because Nagash attempted to invade the Realm of Light and to destroy it and absorb it into the Realm of Death, making himself like a billion times more powerful. And although Teclis barely won, thanks more to very good planning and scheming, because he kind of got his ass kicked in the actual like fight, but he did a very good job using Nagash's arrogance against him and ultimately Nagash was defeated and shattered into a bunch of little pieces. He was essentially killed, but Nagash is the god of death, or the god of undeath at least. So killing him isn't really a practical solution. It just kind of sets him back while he reforms for a while. So the Necroquake was ended, and with Teclis having defeated Nagash, he also cast a really big spell that purified a lot of the death magic going around the realms. But by getting rid of all this death magic, it essentially created a vacuum. So the other side of the equation, being life magic, really surged. And so life magic, it kind of exploded almost in potency. And Alariel took advantage of this, the goddess of life, and used this to cast a very big, powerful, super uber spell called the Rite of Life, which unleashed a giant wave of life-giving energy all over the entirety of the mortal realms. She did this because she basically resurrected Athel Loren. She resurrected the Oak of Ages in the realm of life, and we're still kind of waiting to see the full ramifications of that. It seems vaguely implied that she might be resurrecting Kurnoth, who is Age of Sigmar's version of Kurnoth / Orion, though he has not appeared yet. And there's no 100% confirmation of that, but I feel very strongly that's where they're going with it. But in any event, with the resurrection of Athel Loren and the Oak of Ages, that was cool, but unfortunately, that healing wave of energy, when it reached the realm of Beast, it basically sent the realm of Beast into overdrive, and it also freed the new god of destruction, Ragnos, who is the first actual destruction god that is playable and is on the battlefields, and he is the god of earthquakes, and he's a really fun giant centaur type monster who has a pretty interesting storyline. But anyway, Kragnos popped up, and with his resurgence and his return to the mortal realms, along with the realm of Beast going just super frenzied, the era of the Beast had begun. So in the era of the Beast, all of the bestial creatures in the mortal realms are going completely apeshit, and a lot of the more uncivilized factions are significantly stronger than they have been in the past. So the Beastmen, of course, stand to benefit from this very heavily. Now so basically that was just to get you caught up to what I'm going to be talking about here as far as AOS is concerned, which is that the Beasts of Chaos and AOS haven't really done a lot. They're there, but they haven't really played much of a role in the goings on. So it seems like this book is suggesting that they're going to be playing a very big role in matters to come, if not just flat out when their book comes out. There doesn't seem to be any confirmation of new models besides the new Beast Lord, but there's talk about a lot of things that sound like they could be new models. So they talk about that the beating of hooves and braying of horns grows louder across the mortal realms as the beasts of chaos storm forth from their lairs with renewed vigor. The Gorefathers' lost children revel in desecration of bloodshed, and the heir of the beast has empowered them to savage new heights. The Gorefather, by the way, basically the Gorefather is just the primordial beast man. So when the Warhammer Fantasy World exploded, all of the chaos gods kind of wandered off to go terrorize other lands and did not notice the mortal realms for a very long time. However, it seems that just through the innate way that the mortal realms coalesced and reformed themselves after the destruction of the Warhammer Fantasy World, it resulted in beastmen just kind of naturally appearing or naturally popping up, and they were one of the first chaos species to appear in the mortal realms. And the Gorefather was like the original primeval beastman. So many of the beastmen worship him as like a deity, though he is not. I would not say that he's really a true god. It's hard to tell. And it's not really clear if he's actually a living thing that's still around, or if he's more of a concept. But the Gorefather, we don't have a ton on him yet. He seems much more like a concept, but we'll get into some really exciting stuff down in a moment. So as the power of Gur swirls, a supernatural malady of mutation devolution is sweeping the realms. Known as the Turnskin Plague, this unnatural flux is carried on campfire tales and spread through dark rituals, causing unfortunate victims to start braying, mewling, and making themselves at home in sties and stables. Many of those afflicted begin to mutate into Gorekin themselves and are driven out into the wilds by their fearful neighbors until a rampaging bray herd sweeps them up anyway. Life isn't great for these half-beasts. The true beastmen name them Gaves and Turnskins, tormenting any who can't prove their strength. So that's actually super exciting. We had turn skins and gaves in Warhammer Fantasy. They were a very major component of the Beastmen from a lore perspective, but they never really made an appearance on the tabletop. They did make quite a few appearances in like the role-playing game, and they were very significant for understanding how the Beastmen like worked and thrived. So the fact that they seem to be getting a major focus in the lore in Age of Sigmar, I think is very promising. I don't think they're ever going to get standalone tabletop models, but I would love to see turn skins or gaves actually show up as like a unit type instead of just being talked about. Typically they're just kind of referred to as like, oh yeah, they're just among the Beastmen. Then we got some new artwork that looks absolutely incredible. This is genuinely some of the best Beastmen art I think I've seen in Age of Sigmar so far, is these Minotaurs just going ham on these Stormcast Eternals. Whether born or made, this swell of bodies empowers the beasts of chaos all the same. The influx of numbers has seen many herds reshape their primal hierarchies through vicious infighting. Plenty of new beast lords have emerged from this bloodbath, with some claiming to be descended from the primordial sire of Ruin himself. So the sire of Ruin is the Gorefather, the first. And I would love to see him appear as a special character. He's the only, and this is something, the main thing I want to talk about in the video is we'll talk about at the end. He's kind of the only big bad of the Beastmen that really would be a standalone AOS character. But carrying on, all Beastmen wish to reduce the realms to a primeval hunting ground, but few have stumbled across as effective a method as Goragon Kai. This grizzled Bray Shaman is a zealous worshipper of Morghur, the bringer of mutation, and he has discovered that enslaving the incarnates of Gur will help accelerate the breakdown of the realm of beasts into a primordial wasteland. Also, some brand new art that looks absolutely fantastic. Here's some classic art that looks really nice. Even the slow-witted and frenzied Gorgons and Cygors have banded together under the banner of the crimson-skinned Cygor, known as Uzkad Shatterhoof. Their great quake fray now rampages up and down the coast of Tusks, growing in numbers by the day. These splintered happenings may seem like outbursts of savage energy, united by no greater plan or purpose, but they all further the agenda of ruin that beats at the chaotic heart of the Great Phase. It won't be long until the brutal power of these embittered creatures conjures Battletome Beasts of Chaos into existence, which they say is coming up soon. Which does leave a little bit of hope that maybe they'll reveal another miniature for the Beasts of Chaos. But man, I really like the art. Is so good. So the big thing I want to talk about is that most of what they're referring to, although it kind of sounds like special characters, it's more likely that it's referring to the sub-factions. So in Age of Sigmar, unlike Fantasy, though I would love to see this show up in Fantasy, is that every book has a race to it, so like Beasts of Chaos. And then within the Beasts of Chaos, there will be several sub-factions that when you make your army list, you say that you're playing one of those sub-factions, and it gives you various bonuses for certain kinds of units. Generally speaking, it doesn't really restrict your build, it just might guide your build. So for instance, if I'm playing Seraphon, which are the Lizardmen, if you take the Thunder Lizard sub-faction, you get a significant amount of bonuses to all of your big stompy dinosaurs. So it encourages you to take a lot of the big dinosaurs, particularly Bastiladons and Stegodons, because it can actually allow some of the creatures to shoot or use their abilities twice. Or if you take the Serpent's Fang, that's kind of that's kind of like the Serpent's Fang. That's not right. The Sotek's, is it Sotek's? I forget. Been too long since I've played them. But there's like a skink focused one that's all about like Sotek and your skinks and moving them back and forth. There's one that is really focused on Saurus. There's one that's really focused on the big dinosaurs. So there's all sorts of different things you can kind of mix and match together. But in any event, what's interesting about this for me and what I'm excited about is the potential for special characters. I'm really hoping that this is the edition where the Beasts of Chaos are going to get the spotlight, and they're going to really get the main focus as one of the like important chaos factions in whatever event we're building up to. Because generally speaking, every edition for Age of Sigmar has had a major event at the middle point and the end point, where we get like special campaign books, and there are like new miniatures released and new rules and new, there's a fun campaign that advances the storyline. So I'm hoping that's what they're building up to in 3rd edition, and that the Beasts of Chaos are going to feature very heavily in this era of the Beasts against the forces of destruction, and then Order is up to some shenanigans. though I'm assuming that the big campaign that's coming out probably isn't going to come out until after the Cities of Sigmar, which are getting a huge amount of buildup. The Free Cities of Sigmar book that's coming out is getting like a completely new range, and they've been teasing parts of the range about once every like 2-ish weeks or something. But in any event, there are 3 main characters for the Beastmen, the Beasts of Chaos, who seem very likely to show up in the game at some point as playable miniatures. And those are the Sire of Ruin, also known as the Gorefather, and he is completely original to Age of Sigmar. There's nothing like him in Warhammer Fantasy. There's no, like, we don't have any myths or any stories about anything that's even remotely similar to him. There's no primordial sire of the Beastmen in fantasy. So that's kind of why I really would love to see him as maybe just like a super ancient and grizzled beast lord that's very powerful and very wise and cunning in like that dangerous predator way. You know, kind of like I kind of imagine him as like a Gothor the Beast Lord or Khazrak the One-Eye character, but on steroids, and who's like, you know, thousands upon thousands of years old instead of only a few decades or even a few centuries. So just this kind of like terrifying embodiment of everything, all of the ruinous destruction of the Beastmen. But then there are the other 2 characters who you'll be familiar with from fantasy. So you have Morghur. Morghur has full on ascended to godhood. I mean, Morghur's always been a god essentially, but he was always kind of, you know, we always associated him more as a character who was immortal and, you know, couldn't be killed and all this stuff. Well, he could be killed, but he would always come back. In Age of Sigmar, there doesn't appear to be any physical manifestation of Morghur yet. And that's kind of the big thing, is one of the things I'm really expecting for the Beasts of Chaos, because this would make sense with fantasy to be a playable character in both Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar, is the avatar of Morghur returning. Because Morghur is a very big important character for the Beastmen in fantasy, and he's also a huge important character for the Beasts of Chaos in Age of Sigmar. He is their primary god. The funny enough, or not funny enough, but interestingly enough, the Beastmen, or sorry, the Beasts of Chaos in Age of Sigmar do not worship the 4 greater gods of chaos. It's very, very rare for them to really care about them that much. Slaanesh, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Khorne are very rarely invoked or cared about by the Beasts of Chaos, because the Beasts of Chaos kind of have decided to do their own thing, and they realize that the 4 primary powers don't really give a shit about them. So the only Beastmen that actively tend to worship them are the Beastmen that are actually associated with those gods. Like the Zongors obviously worship Tzeentch, and the Slongors obviously worship Slaanesh. But we still haven't seen the Korngors or Pestigors yet. I really hope they make an appearance sometime in the near future. We were all desperately hoping, those of us who follow AOS were really excited about maybe getting them, the Korngors this edition, because we got Korngors in Blood Bowl, which, you know, cool. Funny enough, we have Korngors and Pestigors in Blood Bowl, and then we have Slongors and Zongors in Age of Sigmar. So I feel like they need to have a student exchange program so we can get all 4 of the Beastmen variants in the different settings. But in any event, what I'm genuinely expecting is I don't think they're going to release a Morghur model for Age of Sigmar specifically. I think they're going to release the actual Morghur for fantasy when the Beastmen get their range update for Warhammer Fantasy Tabletop, and then, or the old world, I should say, because Morghur is going to play a major role. Morghur, although we don't know exactly what he's up to during the Great War Against Chaos, he's been around by that point for a very, very, very long time. So, like, Morghur predates the founding of Bretonnia. Like, he's been around for at least 5. He's probably been around for like I can't remember when his first appearance is, but long time. He showed up not terribly long, I think, for the first time after the War of Vengeance. But in any event, when Morghur appears in fantasy, I really hope they allow his miniature to be used in Age of Sigmar, but he's the avatar of Morghur in Age of Sigmar. I don't know if they would treat him as a special character, or if they would kind of pull the village thing which they've done with a lot of characters, where in fantasy they were special characters, but in Age of Sigmar they're more generic characters. But I think he would be fine appearing in both settings, because Morghur is eternal. Morghur cannot end. So him manifesting during the era of the Beast, I think, would be really, really awesome and badass to go along with his return in Warhammer the Old World. But the other character who exists in fantasy, but I don't think would ever be playable in fantasy, the old world, but should absolutely be playable in Age of Sigmar, is Krakenrok the Black. So Krakenrok the Black, we all know and love him. He is the father of the Dragon Ogre race, and he plays a huge role in Age of Sigmar. When the Warhammer Fantasy World exploded, we actually got some update, thanks to the Beasts of Chaos battle tomes, that Krakenrok the Black was involved. He didn't appear in the end times, but he was retroactively added to the end times thanks to Age of Sigmar, where we're told that he was basically just rampaging around the world, causing horrible ruination and destruction wherever he went, indulging in the final battle. But unlike the rest of the Servants of Chaos, the Beastmen didn't get sucked into the realm of chaos and get to, be taken on a lovely cruise to go destroy other worlds with the warriors and demons, because the Chaos Gods don't care about them, which adds up. Instead, the Chaos Gods destroyed the world, and they just let all the Beastmen die with it. They didn't try to save them or preserve them because they don't give a shit about them. So the world exploded, but Krakenrok, being Krakenrok, didn't care. He, instead of dying because, the world he was on imploded, Krakenrok just kind of went hurtling off into space, and he was fine. The vacuum of space, or the I think it's called the something abyss, is what it's known as in Age of Sigmar, kind of the space between stars and the space between the mortal realms. But it's literally just outer space, but it has like terrifying monsters and stuff in it. But in any event, Krakenrok went like hurtling through it, and he was totally fine. And eventually he crash landed in Azir, which is the realm of heavens in Age of Sigmar. And he was actually one of the very first beings there, which is super interesting. He is considered like one of the founding creatures or founding species upon Azir. And somehow, some way, either other Shaggoths survived or something, but it seems that Krakenrok was able to essentially refound his race thanks to the power he found within the mortal realms. I'm not exactly sure how he did that, but it seems that the dragon ogres are no longer infertile. Like, they seem to be a stable species again, or they at least found like a new way to create Shaggoths through magic, or who knows what. There hasn't really been any lore exploring it, but at least not that I'm aware of. But Krakenrok was essentially like the original native entity to Azir, and then Sigmar showed up. So after Krakenrok had taken over the mountains of Azir, and him and his race had been there for a while, Sigmar eventually makes his way to the mortal realms, and during his exploration of Azir, he comes into conflict with Krakenrok because they know each other at this point, and that Krakenrok knows what Sigmar is, and Sigmar definitely knows what Krakenrok is, and they have this huge epic battle that eventually results in Sigmar casting out Krakenrok the Black and his spawn. So the dragon ogres are forced to flee from Azir, and they very bitterly have inhabited the mountains of other realms ever since, but they've always wanted to go back. And we don't know where Krakenrok is right now. He vanished and has not been seen since, but we know for a fact that he's still alive, and it's very heavily implied that he will one day return. And when he does, shit's gonna hit the fan, because obviously he's a big bad. And the thing in Age of Sigmar is that there are entities as large as Krakenrok running around in Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar is not as bound as fantasy is when it comes to size. So you have characters like Kragnos, the other gods, many of them, with their war forms or the way they manifest themselves. You have the Sons of Behemoth, which is an entire faction of just giants, and uber giants being the Mega Gargants. So it's a faction that is full of these nightmarishly colossal entities. So Krakenrok honestly is right at home. He's just one of the most colossal chaos creatures that would be easily able to go toe to toe with the Mega Gargants of destruction, or the new Dragon Lords of order and stuff like that. So I am very much hoping we will see Krakenrok appear in Age of Sigmar, hopefully in the near future. But where this also ties into the old world is there is a very, 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 very important scene in the old world that better give us a goddamn miniature, which is Kolek Suneater. So Kolek Suneater plays a huge role in the old world, the timeline of the old world, because the siege of Prague is ended by Kolek. In that the siege of Prague was that the city, which has stood against the forces of chaos for many years, when Azavar Kul finally laid siege to it, it's a giant, epic, terrifying battle, and the forces of chaos are initially held at bay, and then it's literally the opening scene from Attack on Titan where Kolek Suneater shows up. And when Kolek shows up, he shows up in the midst of a storm, and he walks up to the gate, and with a single swing, he ends the siege, because he brings up Star Crusher and he slams it into the walls of Prague, and by doing so, he shatters a portion of the wall, and he creates an opening, and he just keeps slamming into the wall until he makes it big enough for himself to fit through. But with just that first hole he punctures in the wall, the forces of chaos are able to flood inside, and then Kolek himself goes into the city, where he eventually wanders into the temple district and destroys all of the temples to the other gods in a rage. So I fully expect 100% Kolek Suneater to make a full appearance in the old world and be a playable miniature. I'm curious if they would want it to be once again kind of a situation of, oh, he's Kolek Suneater if you play him in fantasy, but then if you play him in Age of Sigmar, he's just a Shaggoth, or maybe he's a new type of Shaggoth, or maybe he can literally just be Krakenrok. Or maybe it's still Kolek. We don't actually know where Kolek is in the end times. He never appears. So it could very well be that in Age of Sigmar, they're like, hey, look, Kolek's back because he never died and his dad survived. So I guess he's still around too. I personally would rather see Krakenrok in Age of Sigmar and then let Kolek be the main character of fantasy. Even if that means they have to have two different miniatures, I think that would be totally fine. But I'm really excited to see where the Beasts of Chaos are going. I just kind of wanted to make this video about it because it's like, oh, I could talk about the old world and Age of Sigmar at the same time. But let me know what y'all think. Is there anything about this that I talked about today that you find particularly interesting? Anything you find particularly like fun or dumb, or anything that catches your attention, or anything you're like, oh, I hope that doesn't happen, or I hope that does happen? Do let me know down in the comments below. In any event, I hope you're having a lovely day, and I'll see you around. Thanks for watching.